All right, guys, we have got a lot to discuss today. We're going to be talking about the ongoing case of Danny Masterson, the actor who has been accused and now convicted of sexually violating multiple women. Now, at first, I wasn't sure if I was going to cover this case because it seemed relatively open and shut. However, the more that I was diving into it, the more complex and interesting it became. It's no secret, guys, that I'm fascinated by cults, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I personally view Scientology as a type of cult. And in this case, there are so many elements weaved into it. You have Scientology and multiple alleged cover-ups by the church. You have famous couple Ashton and Mila writing character statements on behalf of Danny, despite creating a foundation focusing on anti-trafficking and child exploitation. You also have a murder from the early 2000s that is now coming back into the spotlight with a public warning to Ashton about his alleged scheming involved in it. There is also Danny Masterson's wife, who has her own history of child heartbreak and family incest. I mean, there is a lot. So the more that I researched, the more I tried to really just make sense of everything and figured that many of you might also be hearing rumblings out there of all of these overlapping situations and also might want some clarity with it as well. So here I am, and I'm going to break it down for you as best as I can. Now, as always, I've got to give you your disclaimer. Everything in this video is alleged and has either been cited from sources or is my opinion. So as always, please remember to do your own research and form your own opinions. All right, guys, smash the subscribe button, smash the like button. My name is Elise, and we are going to get right into it.
This is 10 to Life with Elise.
In May, Danny Masterson was convicted of sexually attacking two women, both former members of the Church of Scientology. Now, there was no verdict on a third charge that was there because of a hung jury. On September 7th, 2023, Danny was ultimately sentenced to 30 years to life in prison for those charges. So in March of 2017, let's just kind of run it back a little bit. 3 women filed sexual assault allegations against Danny Masterson. This prompted an investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department. So Danny, through his agent, denied these allegations. Then, in December of 2017, a 4th victim made her accusations. On June 17, 2020, Danny was charged with sexually attacking a 23-year-old woman in 2001, a 28-year-old woman in early 2003, and a 23-year-old woman in late 2003. The 3 counts came after a 3-year-long investigation that had began back in 2017. So Danny Masterson had 2 trials. His first had resulted in a mistrial after a different jury was just hopelessly deadlocked on all of the charges. He was freed on a $3.3 million bail, but that freedom ended when he had his double conviction on May 31st of this year. He was locked up in the men's central jail in downtown Los Angeles since that conviction while he was awaiting sentencing. And then, just a couple weeks ago, on September 7th, 2023, Danny was sentenced to an indefinite period of 30 years to life in prison, which means that he will be eligible for parole after serving 25 and a half years, but also can be held in prison for life. So let's talk a little bit about Danny Masterson. Let's start there. Danny Masterson played Hyde on That 70s Show and has a very long history with the Church of Scientology. The 40-year-old actor grew up in a family that practiced Scientology. And get this, 3 of Danny's alleged victims are also members or were members of the Church of Scientology. Of course, this means that the Church of Scientology has become a reoccurring theme throughout this entire case and even now post-trial, post-sentencing. And we're going to talk about all of this, and we're going to get there. It's going to be a long one, guys. So not only is Danny Masterson a Scientologist, he isn't the only cast member of that hit sitcom, That 70s Show, that was affiliated with the church. Laura Prepon, who dated one of Danny's brothers in the early 2000s and who is most well known, I think, aside from that 70s show, for her role in Orange is the New Black, also had dabbled a bit in the religion for over a decade. Laura made her first public statement, though, in 2021 after leaving the Church of Scientology back in 2016. In regards to her decision to leave the church, she had told People magazine, and I quote, "If motherhood has taught me anything so far, it's that something can work out for a period of time and then you move on. I am no longer practicing Scientology. I've always been very open-minded, even since I was a child. I was raised Catholic and Jewish. I've prayed in churches and meditated in temples. I've studied Chinese meridian theory, but I haven't practiced Scientology in close to 5 years, and it's no longer a part of my life." Now, many former Scientologists, like actress Leah Remini, correlate Danny's actions to his upbringing in the Scientology church and in that religion. And in Leah's show, Scientology and the Aftermath, Leah interviewed 2 women who had accused Danny of sexually attacking them. One of these women was Chrissy Bixler. She had dated Danny for 6 years. Now, according to The Hollywood Reporter, Chrissy reported that she was sexually attacked by Danny in December of 2001. And this will not be the last that we have heard from Chrissy in today's episode. So a photo has also been released in all of this and has surfaced online that shows Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, Danny Masterson, Laura Prepon, and Wilmer Valderrama all at a Scientology celebration together in the early 2000s, leading many to suspect that Ashton and Mila are Scientologists as well and perhaps practice in secret. We're going to get to more of that in a minute here. And just kind of while we're on the topic of that cast, Wilmer has been under fire in the past too because of his romances with Demi Lovato, with Lindsay Lohan when they were quite young and he was much older with them. So take that for what that is as well. So when all of these allegations first started surfacing and before the arrest of Danny and the charges were brought, in August of 2019, 4 women had filed a lawsuit against Danny and the Church of Scientology for stalking and harassment, and they said that this stemmed from their allegations against Danny. The plaintiffs alleged that Scientology mobilized an aggressive fair game campaign against them. And though the campaigns against each plaintiff differed, each had commenced after they individually had left the church. And they started to realize all of these things were connecting. According to online reports, one plaintiff claimed that her dog actually died from unexplained traumatic injuries to its trachea and esophagus, also alleging that church members chased her as she drove her car, then filmed her without permission, harassed her online, and even posted ads to social media sites soliciting sex in her name. Another plaintiff stated that she and her neighbors observed a man snapping pictures from her driveway, and later that night, someone broke a window in her 13-year-old daughter's bedroom. Now, we haven't heard these types of allegations for the first time here. We have heard them. If you have ever watched Leah Remini's series and docuseries, she has talked about the methods that the church will go to and the extremes to try to intimidate people who have left the church, witnesses in crimes, whistleblowers, things like that. And a lot of these methods often are, as I just outlined. Although they seem serious, that's kind of the norm, I guess you could say, in this practice of Scientology. The stalking, the photographing, the taunting, all of these things. And that, again, according to a lot of the specials that Leah Remini has aired, and you can watch those, and it goes way deeper. It's very good. I suggest watching it. So all 3 of the women who had accused Danny of sexually attacking them testified that the reason that they took so long to report him to the police was because of their fear of the retribution from the Church of Scientology. One of the women even told the court that she was born into a family of Scientologists, and that when she reported the allegation to the church, a top official made it clear that Danny Masterson was untouchable, which we clearly now know he wasn't untouchable because he was convicted and he was sentenced. And during the sentencing, she said to Danny, and I quote, "You are a true coward and a heartless monster." And another one of his victims said, "You are pathetic, disturbed, and extremely violent, and the world is a safer place with you in prison." Okay, so now that we've kind of summarized a bit of Danny's past, the allegations, the conviction, the sentencing, I want to move over into the connection with Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis and their letters of character on behalf of Danny that were sent to the judge, which has now sparked utter outrage from the public.
More than 50 letters on his behalf were sent to the judge, including 2 from co-stars Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. But Jim Murray reports those letters didn't sway the judge.
It's your first look at the letters from Danny Masterson's Hollywood pals to the judge pleading for leniency. And look who asked the judge for mercy, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. In her letter, which was made public today by the court, Mila Kunis describes Masterson, a convicted, as having a caring nature and says he is an outstanding role model. Danny has proven to be an amazing friend, confidant, and above all, an outstanding older brother figure to me. Ashton Kutcher calls him kind, courteous, and hardworking. He has always treated people with decency, equality, and generosity.
Danny and Ashton first met in 1998 while filming the pilot episode of their hit Fox sitcom That 70s Show. They also had filmed it with Ashton's now wife, Mila Kunis. Danny was 22 at the time, Ashton was 19 at the time, and Mila was 14 years old at the time. In the early 2000s, Ashton and Danny were kind of glued at the hip. They partied together often. Danny and Ashton were often each other's plus ones to movie premieres whenever they didn't have a date. And Danny also supported Ashton's film career as he kind of broke out into this movie star persona by even attending the premiere of his 2002 film Just Married. The pair also competed together in the 2003 NBA All-Star Game. And in 2003, both Danny and Ashton also invested in the Italian restaurant Dolce, alongside their That 70s Show co-star Wilmer Valderrama. Then in December of 2004 was that infamous photo that has now resurfaced where Ashton was supporting his co-stars, including Danny, at a Church of Scientology holiday event. Now Mila, Laura, and Wilmer also attended the event, and they attended it for 2 consecutive years. Perhaps being a supportive friend, sure, but to go to a religious holiday event and go 2 years in a row, to me, this is just my personal opinion, signals that you have some sort of interest in the religion. I don't know that I would go to an LDS event 2 years in a row if I wasn't either interested in the religion or a practicing LDS member myself. I don't know that I would go to Catholic Mass 2 years in a row on Christmas Eve if I wasn't a Catholic. So it could just be, yes, supporting their friends, but with what we have heard about the Church of Scientology wanting to always recruit celebrities and big heavy hitter names, to then go 2 years in a row, to me, it feels like maybe there was a little bit more interest or participation there, but you be the judge of that, make your own decision. So in 2016, a decade after the hit show That 70s Show ended, Danny and Ashton reunited on Netflix The Ranch. That year, they hung out together at the Wynn Casino with Danny's brother, Jordan. They partied together with some of their ranch castmates, and now they had a new hit show together. So clearly, they had a very close friendship that spanned over the course of many decades. But then, after accusations, sexual charges emerged against Danny in 2017, his character on the ranch, named Rooster, was completely written off of the ranch. This in an episode during the second half of season 3. So this is where the ties first begin to really sever between Ashton and Danny. However, in January of 2023, Ashton spoke out about the charges against Danny. At the time, Ashton said he wanted his friend and his mentor, who had kept him away from drugs during his early years of fame, to be found innocent of the charges brought against him. Now, quickly, I just kind of want to rewind a second back to Scientology and Ashton and Mila's possible participation and following of that religion. Mila has publicly spoken out about her Jewish faith and how her family enjoys Shabbat dinners every single week. Ashton is also said to be from a conservative Catholic family and has not converted to Judaism. Their children, however, reportedly do practice Judaism. So Ashton has been open about his spiritual beliefs, but again, has not publicly identified as a Scientologist. However, in 2005, he did reportedly express an openness to learn about Scientology. So all of that, coupled with the photos and kind of what we know, draw your own conclusions, make your own opinions. So a man by the name of Aaron Smith Levin, who was also raised in the Church of Scientology, said that he speaks to some of Danny's victims daily. He told News Nation's Chris Cuomo that Ashton Kutcher knew very well the type of person that Danny was when he wrote that character reference for his friend and former co-star. But he claimed that Ashton and Mila did not know that their letters supporting Danny would be made public. But again, that Ashton knows very well the kind of guy that Danny was. Aaron said, and I quote, "I think when Ashton says it was meant for the judge to read, what that really means is we didn't think anyone would see these letters. And if you actually read the letters, it doesn't just say, oh, think of his poor daughter, his daughter shouldn't grow up without a father for more than 15 years, but that the letters went so far as to say that Danny Masterson is essentially the kindest, gentlest, most gracious person that he has ever known, saying, I've never known him to be anything other than a wonderful person. So he is saying that this is just not true, that Ashton's hands are pretty dirty in his complicity with some of the behavior that Danny has exhibited over the last 30 years. Because remember, Danny was one of his closest friends, his party buddy, his friend, his co-star, his confidant, all of the things. And he goes on to say that Ashton knows very well the kind of guy that Danny Masterson was, saying, and I quote, I mean, if you read the letters, it's shocking. Now, speaking about Mila's involvement in all of this, he said, and I quote, I think Mila Kunis is someone who herself was abused from a young age. She was 14 years old when she started acting on that show, referring to that 70s show. Danny was 22 or 23, and Ashton was 19. He goes on to say that some of the things that have come out on social media in the last couple of days is some extremely inappropriate sexual behavior between the group, mostly involving Mila. And we are going to get to that shortly. In a statement released after these letters were made public, Ashton and Mila tried to explain their reasoning for writing the letters, but many thought that it was just doing damage control. In their statement, in part, Mila had said, we support victims, we have done this historically through our work, and we will continue to do so in the future. And in part, this was referencing the foundation that Ashton founded in 2010 called Thorn, which helps build technology to defend children from sexual attacks. And we're also going to get to more of that shortly. I told you guys, it's very complex. There are a lot of layers here. So Ashton continued in this statement, and he said, a couple of months ago, Danny's family reached out to us, and they asked us to write character letters to represent the person that we knew for 25 years, so that the judge could take that into full consideration relative to the sentencing. Mila went on to say that the letters were not written to question the legitimacy of the judicial system or the validity of the jury's ruling, that they were intended for the judge to read, and not to undermine the testimonies of the victims or traumatize them in any way. They go on to say, we would never want to do that, and we are sorry if that has taken place. They wrap up their statement by saying, our heart goes out to every single person that has ever been a victim of any sort of sexual violations, or of course, RAPE.
We are aware of the pain that has been caused by the character letters that we wrote on behalf of Danny Masterson.
We support victims. We have done this historically through our work and will continue to do so in the future.
A couple months ago, Danny's family reached out to us and they asked us to write character letters to represent the person that we knew for 25 years so that the judge could take that into full consideration relative to the sentencing.
The letters were not written to question the legitimacy of the judicial system or the validity of the jury's ruling.
They were intended for the judge to read. And not to undermine the testimony of the victims or re-traumatize them in any way. We would never want to do that. And we're sorry if that has taken place.
Our heart goes out to every single person who's ever been a victim of sexual or rape.
So now let's talk about Thorn really quick, the foundation, because this is another big reason that people are upset by these letters. Ashton Kutcher runs a charitable organization against child exploitation and even against trafficking. It's called Thorn, and it is an organization that Ashton formed with his previous wife and actor Demi Moore back in 2010. And What this organization apparently does and what they claim to do is that it helps build technology to defend children from sexual attacks taking place. Now, people are upset because not only is this couple essentially advocating for a convicted serial predator, but they also have a foundation and publicly vocalize their efforts to combat trafficking and child exploitation, which when you look at those two things, the math just ain't mathin'. It wasn't just the letter that people are appalled with either, and that people are questioning. The public is now also bringing back into the spotlight a murder that Ashton was tied to as a witness, and they are questioning things, wondering if they aren't adding up based on a new statement that was made. So let's talk about this murder quickly, and then we're going to go into the new statement. Ashton was scheduled to go on a date with a 22-year-old woman named Ashley Ellerin back on February 21st, 2001. However, the date never happened, as she was murdered that very night. They had met through mutual friends a couple months earlier in December of 2000. He was at Ashley's house for a housewarming a few weeks before, and according to Ashton, the night of the murder, he and Ashley were going to attend a Grammys after-party together. They spoke at 8:24 p.m. to confirm their plans. He called again a little after 10 p.m. to say that he was on his way over to her house, but apparently she didn't answer the phone. Then at 10:45 p.m., he claimed to have arrived at her house, but she didn't come to the door. So he says that he had peeked into her window and saw what he believed to be wine stains on the carpet. He believed that he had been stood up, and then he left. Well, those wine stains are now suspected to have been blood, and the following morning, her roommate found Ashley stabbed to death with 47 stab wounds. Investigators believe that she had just gotten out of the shower when the murderer stabbed her to death after entering her home. So Ashton admitted that he was initially very freaked out after learning of Ashley's death because his fingerprints were on her doorknob, but he was never a suspect in the case, and he cooperated with the investigation, even testifying at the trial. Michael Gargiulo, the man who was convicted of Ashley's murder, was dubbed the Hollywood Ripper and was ultimately sentenced to death. He was also suspected of killing 2 other women in 1993 and 2005, and of attempting to kill a Santa Monica woman in 2008. He is also a suspect in the 1993 killing of a woman in his hometown back in Illinois, and he is currently incarcerated in San Quentin State Prison. But here is why this case is now coming back into the spotlight over 20 years later. After the letters from Ashton and Mila were made public and the outrage that sparked from them, one of Danny's accusers took to her social media with a direct message toward Ashton. Chrissy Carnell Bixler, who remember dated Danny Masterson in the late 90s and early 2000s, posted an Instagram story which read, "Dear Ashton, I know the secrets your role model keeps for you, ones that would end you. Did you forget I was there? You were on speakerphone that night you called Danny on February 21st, 2001. I hear everything. I heard the plan. In my opinion, you're just as sick as your quote-unquote mentor." Now remember, the date that she's referencing, February 21st, 2001, was the night that Ashley was murdered. But Ashton allegedly didn't learn of her death until the following day. So the question is, what was that phone call about, and what was the plan that was hatched? While Chrissy hasn't offered further commentary on what that plan was with Danny, it has been insinuated that Ashton was having some kind of crisis that night and needed to consult with his friend, and that he spoke with him out front on the phone for nearly 10 minutes before leaving Ashley's house. Again, this is all alleged at this point. On Instagram stories, Chrissy also threw up old footage of Ashton and Mila when they were being interviewed on the Rosie O'Donnell show years and years ago, during which Mila recalled Ashton making a side bet with Danny about French kissing her during a romantic scene that they were to have on that 70s show. Mila was just 14 years old at the time. So in this post that Chrissy makes, she encourages Mila to process her own experiences while she was on the set of that TV show, stating, and I quote, "Dear Mila, I pray you begin to process what you experienced as a child on that set. Your old interviews are very telling. I encourage everyone to watch them and decide for yourself what you hear and see. Do so before they get scrubbed from the internet. I also know what happened in Toronto and after. Question: if that's what you view as a normal relationship with a big brother figure, then I feel very sad for you, and I hope you consider getting into therapy. You all must forget I was there the whole time for those first 5 years of that 70s show. I remember everything. I mean, that is a very direct and bold post to make. And it's going to be interesting to see what else comes of that, because it doesn't seem like Chrissy is going to stay quiet. So with all of this information, many are suspecting that the only reason Mila and Ashton wrote those letters is because Scientology has some real dirt on them. And it's actually believed that many of the 50 letters that were sent to the judge were only written by people at the advice and direct instruction of the Church of Scientology, and that they did so and complied due to wanting to protect their own personal secrets and personal interests. This is, again, I'm just going to revert back to the Leah Remini show, and as she's brought so much of this darkness to light, whether you agree, disagree, whatever. In a lot of these episodes, in addition to the tactics of the church stalking, scaring, and trying to intimidate people, one of the things that they go over, and I forget the exact word, oh shoot, I wish I knew it, but is it collateral? It's kind of like NXIVM, if you're familiar with that cult, where while you're going through the stages of growing within the religion, within the cult, I should say, again, my opinion, you are encouraged and many times required to divulge secrets about your life, expose the skeletons in your closet, so that should you ever get out of line in the future, those officials can hold that over you and over your head and expose you. And that's just another tactic they use to keep you in line, to keep you as the perfect, Scientologist and poster person, especially if you're a celebrity. Now, it's one thing to think that your skeletons are going to come out of the closet, or that you are going to be exposed for things that maybe you did 10, 15, 20 years ago, so you feel compelled to write a letter on this person's behalf at the instruction of the church. You don't think the public's going to see it. You think it's only for the judge's eyes. Then when it goes public, all hell breaks loose. But it's another to be a wife or a family member standing by a now convicted serial predator. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about Danny Masterson's wife, Bijou Phillips, because there is yet another layer in this overly complex situation that makes the entire web, quite honestly, overwhelming. Bijou Phillips, the 43-year-old wife of Danny, is a model, actress, socialite, and singer. She has been married to Danny since 2011, and she shares a daughter with him that they welcomed on Valentine's Day in 2014. Now, I know her best personally from acting. She was in this movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it, although it is very unnerving. I forget what year it was, maybe 2005. It was with Anne Hathaway, and it's called Havoc. And it is a very disturbing movie. Actually, let me pull this up, because the cast, if you haven't seen this actually is going to kind of blow your mind. And I wonder if I could put a clip of the movie in here, actually, without getting a copyright. But it has Bijou Phillips, Anne Hathaway, Channing Tatum, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Mike Vogel, Laura San Giacomo, which I forget what other thing she was on, you would recognize her face, Cherie Appleby, Alexis DeZena, Josh Peck. I mean, a laundry list of people, like A-list celebrities in this movie. But anyways, this movie is about this group of high school kids. They live in Palos Verdes in the hills and the heights, very, very wealthy, but they want to be tough. They want to be hard. So they go to downtown LA. They get involved with some gangs. They do all these things. And Bijou's character wants to be accepted into this gang because she thinks it'll be cool, that it'll give her street cred. So she agrees to pull a train, I don't know how else to say it, with whatever number she rolls on the dice. You roll the dice, a number comes up, and that's how many of these gang members you have to sleep with. So she does this, and then she ends up confiding in her parents because she's so distraught after and traumatized, and she says that it was, in fact, RAPE. Not that this has anything to do with this case, but just bringing me back to that movie. I've seen it about 1 million times. It's unnerving, but you should watch it. So Bijou's childhood and upbringing is actually also quite heartbreaking in itself. She was born out of the marriage between her father John and his third wife. Now her siblings are also famous in their own right. Her sister China was the singer for the band Wilson Phillips, which is the band who sings that hit song, Hold On. I can't put a place in here because I'll get copyright, but hold on, dun, 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 cry. They sing it at the end of Bridesmaids, you know what I'm talking about. She also has an older sister, Mackenzie, who was a young actress. Not childhood actress, I don't think, but like teen actress, and then continued acting. Now, unfortunately, Bijou was put in foster care at the age of about 3 because her parents were apparently unfit to look after her. Bijou then legally emancipated herself from her parents, who were apparently drug addicted at the time, and she was just 14 years old when she did this, after being in foster care for years. So living on her own in New York City and being emancipated, her wild child type party lifestyle completely took flight, where she started tapping into cocaine, ecstasy, and even heroin. In fact, all 3 siblings have also battled drug addiction over the years. 2 of them ended up in rehab to treat the narcotics abuse, while China had checked into a facility to help manage her anxiety. Now, I want to talk about Mackenzie for a little bit, because she also had a lot to deal with and a great amount of controversy over the years. Mackenzie had revealed that she had an incestuous sexual relationship for 10 years with their father, John, which began when she was 19 years old. Mackenzie said it began when her dad sexually violated her when she was just 19 on the night before her wedding. In her memoir, she writes, and I quote, "I woke up that night from a blackout to find myself having sex with my own father. Had this happened before? I didn't know. All I can say is it was the first time I was aware of it. For a moment, I was in my body, in that horrible truth, and then I slid back into a blackout." So as her life began to spiral out of control due to drug use and partying, apparently the sex became consensual, and it went on for almost a decade. She also recalled how she became pregnant, but ultimately decided to terminate the pregnancy after not being sure whether or not the baby belonged to her father or her then husband named Jeff, who had no idea about this secret affair that she was having with her father. And allegedly, the pregnancy was enough to scare and stop the sexual relationship with her father. We know that it's no secret that being exposed to certain behaviors as a young child and witnessing or hearing about certain things sometimes may have an impact on what you will or will not accept, what you may deem as right or wrong, unforgivable or redeemable. And unfortunately, in many situations, sometimes people become desensitized to truly grotesque and unacceptable behavior, all because they have either been a victim of it for many years themselves, or they have witnessed it firsthand, and it seems more acceptable to them because they are used to it, they're desensitized to it. So many are wondering if, due to her own family history and experiences as a party, drug-fueled teen, that this is why Bijou is standing firmly by her husband, Danny Masterson. Because Bijou has always stood by her husband, and allegedly, at one point after the arrests in 2020, she even ridiculed the victims and their families on social media, back when that arrest first happened. Now, I tried to find those posts, but they have, of course, been archived. I think I had found one, but I wasn't able to 100% prove that it was authentic, so that's why I'm not including it in here. But according to many sources, this was something that she did. She went on Instagram and she ridiculed these statements from these victims, some of their family members, when this arrest first happened. Maybe it was a defense mechanism and she was in denial. Who knows? Still, whatever the reason, it's not an excuse and it's unacceptable. Now, a source had said that Bijou believes in Danny's innocence and is concerned also for his safety in prison as a now notorious convicted predator. In her letter to the judge, she wrote that she couldn't accept that he had sexually attacked the women, and she called him a life-saving partner who dedicated himself to farming to support his family when the accusations about him started to emerge and he lost his acting career. She also noted Danny's aversion to drugs, a common principle of Scientology, and his apparent dedication to helping young actors escape the downfalls of wealth and fame. Now, I am going to read her letter in its entirety for you, but I just wanted to make mention, and it's something that stuck out to me, and I know it's because drugs are kind of weaved throughout these allegations, but I find it very interesting that in both her statement and Mila's and Ashton's, they were all very adamant to bring this up, to say, he always steered me clear in the opposite direction of drugs. He never would condone drug use. He never would do this, as though that is the primary concern here. yes, it was an element in all of this, but he wasn't convicted of using drugs. He wasn't convicted of only drugging somebody. He was convicted of sexual crimes, sexual charges. So why are those not being addressed in any of these letters? It's talking to every other facet of his character except that, the one that he has been charged and convicted of. So let me read you this letter, and I'm going to read it in its entirety aside from the parts that have been redacted. Dear Judge, I am writing to ask that you consider this information when sentencing my husband, Danny Masterson. Danny and I have been together for 19 years. We married in 2011, and our beautiful daughter was born in 2014. She is the bright spot throughout many years of crises and uncertainty. I can say that Danny has literally been a life-saving partner to me. A section then has been redacted. It continues, at the time our daughter was just 3 years old. She was our miracle child. I depended on Danny to take care of me and our daughter. I always felt that she would be okay because Danny is an amazing father. He was devoted to our daughter, would read her books, take her on walks, and 2 ballet lessons. I never once heard him complain. The two were inseparable. Another section redacted. When we finally returned home, we thought we could start to focus on our lives as a family. That's when the investigation against him began. After he lost his show and acting career, he devoted himself to finding other ways to earn a living. We left our home in Los Angeles to move to a farm in Santa Ynez, where I could recuperate. Danny immediately began to work the land and grow a beautiful vineyard with 6,000 vines that he tended to on his own for 6 years. He toiled long days on the land to make it profitable for our family. He took classes to learn about growing grapes, wines, and he became a sommelier. He also studied the business end of it. Danny has always been against drugs and helped so many friends and colleagues get sober. My husband, who has never smoked a joint in his life, has strong feelings about drugs that have never wavered. He tried to shield the younger actors he worked with from such temptations and offered them advice on their careers and in their lives. Danny is an amazing father. Our daughter and I are heartbroken that he is not at home with us. It has been very difficult without him here. Even though he is now in jail, he calls her every day. He helps her with homework every night. He teaches her math with kindness and patience. She is far above grade level in all subjects, reading 3 grades above her own, and that is thanks to the guidance and attention of her father. Danny has watched her piano recitals and applauds when she practices in the living room after each song. Our daughter loves her pony on our farm as well as our dogs and cats. But more than anything, she loves her father. When he calls us each day, she ends with, I love you too much, Daddy. Another sentence has been redacted, and in closing it says, we need him more than you can imagine. I know he has been convicted of serious crimes, but the man I married has only been an extraordinary husband to me and a devoted father to our daughter. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. Now, I understand that these letters are meant to, depict somebody's character, defend their character, but nobody cares, in my opinion, if he's a sommelier. Nobody cares if he has a vineyard. Nobody cares that he takes your daughter on walks. While that's great, that's something that should be expected as a parent. Go to the recitals. Take the child on walks. Teach them the math. Do the homework with them. And at the end, when she says, I know that he has been convicted of serious crimes, then why aren't you addressing any of those crimes in your letter, even just to combat the behavior of the crime itself? The only thing she's combating is the drug use. And I don't know that that necessarily means it's because she can't combat the other allegations or is choosing not to because she's trying to not have a spotlight on them. But I don't like it. It just really rubs me personally the wrong way. While I understand it and I get it, and I'm sure if I were in that situation, God forbid, I would probably do something similar. It just is infuriating. And I explain why here too in a minute. So this source continues that Danny is adamant that he did nothing wrong, and his wife Bijou believes him. Her other thoughts are a little more scary and morbid because she doesn't believe that Danny will harm himself in jail, but she is very worried that someone else may kill him or physically harm him in a serious way. And apparently that stress is bringing its own level of stress on her that she apparently has never felt before. And the source says it is a nightmare, but she will be on his side moving forward and continue to be present for their daughter. As I mentioned, Danny Masterson continues to maintain his innocence. And his lawyer said in a press statement that they plan to appeal the verdict in hopes of getting the conviction overturned. Now, here's what I want to say about all of these letters. With each sentence of these letters, Mila and Ashton's letter, Bijou's letter, Giovanni Ribisi's letter, every one of the 50 letters that were written advocating for Danny's great character, it inadvertently invalidates the experiences and trauma endured by Danny's victims. This can be seen as a painful setback for the survivors who exhibited incredible courage in naming their accuser, in challenging the church, and bravely sharing their stories with the world. To have celebrities who hold a significant platform rally behind someone accused of such heinous acts, it can feel like a huge betrayal. It's as if their voices and their pain are being completely dismissed, making the process of healing even more challenging. And this reaction to me is the same and equal to a slap in the face to those who have already endured so much. And it kind of just underscores the ongoing struggle for justice and recognition. As I've mentioned multiple times in this video, Leah Remini has done remarkable work shedding light on the inner workings of Scientology, all through her show Scientology and the Aftermath. The Danny Masterson case, with its intricate web of connections to other celebrities and allegations of cover-ups involving the Church of Scientology, serves as a stark reminder of the complexity surrounding this controversial church, this controversial religion and organization. So as I wrap up today's episode, it is worth acknowledging that there is so much more to uncover about Scientology, and I do plan to explore it in greater depth in a future episode. So please let me know in the comment section if you are interested in delving deeper into this topic. Like I've always said, cults really fascinate me, and I do believe this to be one. Your feedback and your suggestions are always greatly appreciated, so let me know not only if you want me to dive more into this one, but if there's any other cults or any pockets of religion that you want me to look into as well and report back on. Thank you guys for joining me on today's episode and this very complex journey that we went through today and this multifaceted story, because I know that there have been so many rumblings out there, so many things where it's kind of just difficult to make sense of it because it starts to border conspiracy. You don't know what's true, what's real. So I hope that mapping it out this way was a little bit easier for you to digest and understand, as more things I'm sure are going to continue emerging every single day. So should there be a lot more information, should Chrissy share more information herself, I will definitely circle back with you and come back with another detailed video breaking all of that down. So make sure that you take a quick second really quick, hit subscribe so that you don't miss that in the event that that gets published and posted. All right, guys, thanks again for today and tuning in with me. Again, I hope you appreciate the coverage. Please don't forget to like this video on your way out. Let me know what you think about this entire situation below. The letters, Mila and Ashton, the Scientology of it all. Let me know. My brain is honestly absolutely fried at this point, and I am very interested to know your thoughts. So comment below. All right, guys, thanks again, and until the next one, stay safe. Bye.